No, I'm just talking. Okay. I can't quite tell. Is the audio on for me? Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you all for turning up. I was kind of worried that, given that it's only noon and that I'm opposite Null Sleep's thing on the chiptune scene, I'm actually quite pleasantly surprised that a number of you have turned up. My name is Michael McFarland. You can call me Ned, just to be confusing. It's from my middle name. I, as per the title of this talk, am not a geek. More apropos to the conference, I'm not a hacker. But not a geek sounded like a better title. I've come here to sort of present the view of the technological world, or problems of the split between geeks and non-geeks from the point of view of the non-geek. It's one of the things with the themes of Nauticon, with tech and art, creativity, forming communities around that. There's a lot of things that are covered. There's the art tech scene, particularly with the Block Party. There's a lot of talk about hacker spaces. Hacker Foundation is doing quite a lot in terms of building the hacker community. And there's also a lot of talk about the creative economy. That's going to be the keynote speech. And also at the introduction about the Ingenuity Festival. This idea of promoting sort of the art tech economy as a way forward. Is there something?
Uh-oh. Check.
Yeah, are you getting good audio now? Okay. Anyway, while I support and quite enjoy coming to this type of a conference where sort of the hacker end of creating these sort of spaces is being built, there are a lot of us non-geeks out there, people who don't understand technology. And not all of us are complete idiots. Many of us are quite intelligent. It's just not our scene. And so my question is, how do people with different interests, who aren't part of this scene or the art side of it, how can we work together to form a culture and a broader community where we support the type of work that you do? Because the larger the gap between the people who know what the hell's going on with the technology and the people that don't, the more problems are going to arise, both with in the public policy sphere, like the laws that are implemented by people who don't actually understand the technology, but also with just getting you guys the respect you deserve for the complexity of the work that you know how to do. Because if people don't know what it is that you do, they're not going to care, and thus you're not going to get people going into the art tech scene and forming the creative economy. So I started thinking about this when I was reading it was originally a lecture by C.P. Snow. He wrote it back in 1959. It's called The Two Cultures. He was in Oxford, I believe it was, or Cambridge, Don. He wrote this book that in the mid-20th century he was saying that there were really two cultures developing. There was the humanities side of academia, and there was the scientific side. And he was both. He was a trained scientist, but he was also a novelist. So he would be at academic parties with the literature types and the humanities types, and he would hear them scoff about, I was talking to the scientist the other day, and he hadn't heard about the latest thing that was in the theater, and they would roll their eyes and laugh at how uneducated this person might be. So he chimed up and asked, "Can you describe to me the second law of thermodynamics?" And they would just sort of stare at him blankly. And he says, "Yet I was asking them something which is the scientific equivalent of, have you read a work of Shakespeare's? It's basic knowledge." And he goes on to think that even if he had asked about mass and acceleration, which would have been the scientific equivalent of saying, "Can you read?" a lot of these, non-sci people would have gone, "Huh, what?" Mass, it just sort of sits there. And they wouldn't have had any idea what he was talking about. And that was 1959. Thermodynamics was his sort of key example of whether or not people knew what they were talking about. Now, you have the capacity to hold worldwide communication in your hand. I can take my cell phone out and call friends of mane over in England. ENIAC used to fill a room. We have computers now that do that, probably fit in the palm of your hand, certainly can sit on your lap. I mean, the technology has advanced far beyond what he was talking about, and yet I think the gap is greater because people have cell phones, people have laptops. The technology is no longer confined to the laboratory or to, it used to be that everybody's endpoint of the telephone system was their telephone, and most of the technology was in a building somewhere. Now they're holding it. They're carrying it around with them. It's much more in people's daily lives. Oh, there we go. And yet, a lot of people don't really know how it works. And Snow thought there were two main problems that I alluded to in the introduction that stemmed from this. One is that people make bad decisions if they don't know what's going on, and also that they don't. There's a lack of respect among people who don't know the technology for those that do, because they don't understand the complexity of it. Just an example, specifically of the problems when the non-geek doesn't know what the hell's going on. And this, I'm sure many of you will laugh at me because it's a really simple problem. But back in 2001, I bought a new laptop, Windows XP. I had been using PGP pretty rarely at the time, but I thought I'd install it. No one told me that, at least with my configuration, PGP and Windows XP were fatally incompatible. It froze my keyboard, and I could not do anything with my computer. I tried what I could, which was essentially searching Google and saying, what the hell's going on? And buried deep in the Microsoft knowledge base was some sort of reference to this. But I tried the few things that I knew how to do, and that was the end of that. Fortunately, some IT friends of mine who knew what the hell to do were able to, partition the drive, install another operating system in the partition. I could log into that, rescue my files before wiping the whole thing and starting again. It's, I understand that it's a relatively simple solution if you know what to do, which I didn't. But more seriously, when you get into the public policy, it's, when I have a problem, I go to somebody who knows how to fix it and they fix it. When communities have a problem that they don't quite understand, they start to make bad decisions based on they're not quite knowing exactly how the thing works. And I actually saw this a lot yesterday with Jason Scott's talk about Wikipedia, that and people can abuse the system, but if you don't fully recognize how they're abusing the system, if you don't see what they're doing, you'll try a technical fix that isn't actually going to work. The example that I thought of was when parents, in particular, are afraid of children getting a hold of pornography in the school, on the school computer and the library computer, they start flipping out and they put really restrictive content blockers on the sites, which also block useful information about sexual education, about medical issues, because they don't understand that a blanket thing like that isn't going to work the way the internet is set up. It just doesn't operate that way. So they're avoiding the human solution, which is to work with your children, understand what they're looking at, and sometimes if something slips through, yes, that is the danger of the internet, work with it, rather than try and slap a fix on from the top. And then if you scale that up a level with network neutrality, with the broadcast flag idea, a lot of the people who are making these laws that affect how the internet and how technology is used and will develop in the coming decades, they don't understand actually how it works. They just have heard horror stories about what happens. Oh, all this horrible stuff is available. We must restrict it. We must put these laws in effect. And a lot of that is based on not knowing and not understanding the benefits that come from things being designed the way that they are. But also, as I said, Snow pointed out that if people don't understand technology, they don't understand or they don't respect people that do. And this also has public policy implications. I was looking at the idea of the Cisco Certified Internetwork Expert Program. most people, particularly outside of the IT field, don't know what that means. But it's a harder certification to achieve than law school. It's more difficult to pass than the bar, and you have to pass it more frequently than you have to sit your medical boards if you're a doctor. The pass rate is less than for the bar, and you have to do it every 2 years as opposed to every 7 or 5, depending on what kind of doctor you are. And yet people recognize doctor, lawyer. Oh, wow, you're such a great person. You've studied all this sort of stuff. But they don't understand the CCIE, so they end up not respecting the people that do. Now, that's one thing if you're in this country where we have plenty of people with that or an equivalent certification from another system. But if you're concerned about the issue of the digital divide, particularly in the developing world, that the more technologically advanced we become in the West, the farther behind people lag in countries where they don't have Wi-Fi hotspots, where they don't have even the cables running out into the rural areas to bring the internet to people. I was looking at these stats. There are 8 CCIE certified people in Nigeria, in a population of 140 million. That's 1 per 17.5 million people. That's all that there is in Nigeria that at least have the Cisco certification. I presume that the sort of the technical expertise in other certifications is equally dismal. In the U.S., we have 260 times that many people. So if you're concerned about the digital divide, if you're concerned about bringing the benefits of technology to people around the world, you have to be concerned that nobody respects the CCIE designation enough to push it as a thing that people should get. There are plenty of doctors, there are plenty of lawyers in Nigeria, and they need those too, but that's because, students from there come over here and we're like, oh yes, you should study this, you should study this. They come over here and we don't know that, the tech knowledge is equally important, and so you don't promote it. It's an under-respected field, and so you get people, there's a lack of education, which particularly affects a situation like a developing country. So I've sort of touched on the problems that can arise when not enough people know about tech. My question is what to do about it. And I've seen, certainly from the hacker side of the equation, a couple of different answers that have come forward. The first is what I call the idea of the prime directive solution. If people don't understand technology, you better not give it to them because they're going to hurt themselves. And that's usually the nice way that it's put. I have plenty of hacker friends, and I mentioned this concept that, what do you think about non-hackers? And, the language becomes somewhat unmoderated. I can see where you're coming from, in that there are dumb people out there, and they ask really dumb questions, and it's hard not to laugh at somebody who just does not get something that you picked up pretty quickly, which is a basic thing. But I counter that with the example of my fiancée. My fiancée, Lisa, is a pediatric gastroenterologist. She is a subspecialist doctor, and she does really good work. She fixes your children, or if you are under 18, she fixes you. She does not understand anything about computers, less than even me, and I have a cursory knowledge at best. But she at least respects the people who do. So if she has a problem at her computer at work, she calls up the clinic IT team. They come down and they fix it. And if they have a child who has a stomach illness, she knows how to fix that.